different times. Roger, your take on this, because basic confusion, you have often told me, is the best weaponization of the internet, of disinformation. It's not the stuff that actually targets someone, it's confusion.
And it's really important to understand that the debate we're having about technology is about whether move fast and break things, the philosophy that built Facebook, has any business in democracy. And I would argue the answer is no. We should not be having smartphones counting everything. This is not about the program of that product. It's about the idea in the first place. And what you see going on now is this weaponization of social media and, frankly, cable television to get people in an agitated state. And there's a real focus on the Bernie Sanders audience because they have a lot of anger left over from 2016. So the older fans are more easily enraged, and it has become a huge problem because it's a no-lose thing for the Trump people, because no matter what happens, you reduce the vote in November, because if the party doesn't come together, either the Bernie fans are angry at somebody else gets nominated, or the fans of other people are nominated because the Bernie people get.
Right, and we already saw lower turnout in Iowa than expected. Brandy, one of the things that Roger used to always say to me when we were talking, we were focused on foreign intervention and interference in elections, is that don't take your eye off the ball, that there are bad actors here. And do these platforms, can they handle that? They've spent a lot of time, and not satisfying time to some of us, on foreign interference. What about domestic interference?
Can they handle it? No. Or maybe they can, but they haven't shown us that. What they've shown us is that they've said that they really want to curb misinformation and disinformation, but when that comes into practice, they're either too slow or they don't take strong enough movement to do so. So there was an example of a voter fraud misinformation story that was spread by a group called Judicial Watch. Then it was further spread by some Fox News types, by some disinformation types, and it spread like wildfire, right? So what happened with that? Twitter didn't take it down, didn't do anything to stop its reach. Facebook, hours after the fact, had a separate fact checker fact check that and then put a warning label on that, but not after. But by the time they had done that, a conservative pro-Trump outlet, the Epoch Times, it had already been seen by 175,000 people, interacted with online by 175,000 people. So the cat was out of the bag when they chose to do those things. It had already spread. And then when the Iowa Secretary of State finally, put out a fact check saying this isn't true, here's the evidence, that was seen by a teeny tiny infinitesimal, small group of people compared to the lie. It's just, we don't stand a chance.
You and Ben, you and Brandy dig around in these places to actually get the answers, to find out why, as Roger has always pointed out, I don't know whether it's the algorithms or it's people and the way we act, but why the bad stuff spreads so much more effectively than the true stuff.
Yeah, it's people exploiting that. You just saw Steve Bannon, he made a career out of it. He's kind of saying the quiet part aloud here, right? Don't trust institutions. They're not going to help you out. And by the way, it doesn't matter what your vote does anyway, because that's what he had incredible success in 2016 pulling off, basically. And, Roger has talked about this too. The goal of all of these talking points, from that Saturday night poll coming out that Bannon was talking about, was to split the party, was to make it so people distrust institutions. And once you start distrusting institutions, it doesn't just end with politics. It ends with people saying, maybe I don't trust the CDC anymore. Maybe I don't trust people who are talking about vaccines. Maybe I don't trust people who are talking about coronavirus. And it drums up fear in the populace. And it makes it so everyone is a little bit more afraid. And then bad actors come in, provide them with feel-good information that's wrong.
Yeah.
And they know how to exploit it. And social media companies do not stop it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.